Landmarks and historic buildings are being demolished all over America, and increasingly, it's happening in the name of a well-meaning movement called YIMBYism, or Yes in My Backyard for those who are unfamiliar. I want to make an argument that might sound counterintuitive at first. The people who say yes to everything are, in their rush to build affordable housing, helping to destroy the very thing that makes our cities worth living in. Not because their goal is wrong. We genuinely do need more housing, but because too often the wrecking ball lands on exactly the wrong buildings and neglects already empty lots. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive into a special episode of This House. YIMBY stands for Yes in My Backyard. It's a direct response to the older acronym NIMBY, Not in My Backyard. The stereotype of the homeowner who fights every apartment building, every duplex, every bus lane near their property. YIMBYs flip the script. They argue reasonably that American cities have spent decades making it nearly impossible to build enough homes, and that the result is a full-blown affordability crisis. Their basic idea is to build more housing of all kinds in more places and stop letting a small group of neighbors veto everything. And here's the thing, the YIMBYs are largely right about the core problem. The numbers are staggering. Freddie Mac estimated the US housing shortage at 3.7 million units as of the third quarter of 2024, noting in its November 2024 outlook that the deficit had declined slightly but remained enormous. The mortgage giant's economists have called inadequate supply the root cause of the affordability crisis, and they've estimated that the shortage has prevented roughly 1 million American households from even forming. Young people stuck living with their parents because there's nowhere they can afford to go. The research backing the Build More position is also genuinely strong. Economist Evan Mast, in an Upjohn Institute working paper, found that building 100 new market rate units leads 45 to 70 people to move out of below median income neighborhoods as people trade up and vacate older homes, with almost all of that effect occurring within 5 years. A separate study by Brian Asquith, Evan Mast, and David Reed for the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia found that new buildings decrease rents in nearby units by about 6% relative to units slightly farther away. And a July 2025 analysis by the Pew Charitable Trust covering 1,654 zip codes from 2017 to 2024 found that every 10% increase in a metro area's housing supply was associated with rents rising about 5% less, with the steepest declines landing on older, cheaper Class C apartments where lower-income families actually live. So let me say it plainly, building more housing works. If you care about affordability, you should want a lot more of it. The YIMBYs deserve credit for dragging that truth into the mainstream, but notice what none of that research says. None of it says the way to build more housing is to demolish the good old buildings we already have. The problem isn't building, it's what we're bulldozing to do it. Here's where the movement goes off the rails. In practice, yes to everything too often becomes yes to tearing down a 130-year-old church for 4 single-family homes. And that's not hypothetical. It's a real thing that happened in Chicago in late 2025. In the Logan Square neighborhood, the Evangelical Lutheran Christuskirche on North Richmond Street, designed by Flizikowski and Kaiser for a German congregation in 1896, was demolished along with its adjoining school building. 2 demolition permits were issued at the end of October 2025, and Chicago YIMBY was the first to report the teardown. What's replacing this complex? According to Block Club Chicago and Chicago YIMBY reporting, 4 single-family homes for developer Marvin Development LLC, each with a 3-car garage and roof decks, permitted at a reported cost of about $903,000 apiece. Preservationists were dismayed, and it's easy to see why. As the neighborhood history blog Postcard Past pointed out, there was a converted church nearby with 10 units of housing that paid roughly $90,000 in property taxes in a recent year, while the 4 new homes replacing this church are likely to generate closer to $60,000 combined, and provide housing for less people. So you tear down a beautiful, structurally sound building, you replace it with fewer housing units, and the city collects less tax revenue. It's a loss on every axis: history, housing, and money. But here's the maddening part, and it's the whole point. Nobody had to demolish the church to build housing. Churches are structurally some of the best adaptive reuse candidates in any city. They have soaring interior volumes, thick masonry walls, and gorgeous windows. Developers all over the country are turning them into apartments. Block Club Chicago even noted that this particular demolition bucks a trend among developers to restore churches and convert them into apartments. The church could have been carved up into apartments. Instead, the neighborhood lost one of its most cherished landmarks. Then there's Lakeview. In March 2026, a 1910 graystone at 3617 North Magnolia was demolished for a 2-unit frame building. Now, per Chicago YIMBY's July 2026 reporting, The Greystone right next door at 3619, built in 1906, and which sold in late June for $1.35 million, has its own new construction permit. Same developers, same demolition contractor, same architectural firm, same result. 2 grand old stone homes replaced by 2 brand new frame buildings. Even the readers of Chicago YIMBY, a site whose entire brand is cheering on new development, revolted in the comments. One wrote that it was unacceptable that this beautiful greystone is to be demolished for an ugly box. Another put his finger on the exact issue. So many empty lots in other places they can put the ugly boxes. That commenter was onto something important, and it's the crux of the argument. Some neighborhoods really are full, but look next door. I'm not going to pretend that every hot neighborhood has room to spare. Parts of Lakeview, Logan Square, and Lincoln Park in Chicago are genuinely built up. If you want to add a lot of housing there, you often can't do it without touching something that already exists. That's a real constraint, and preservationists who deny it are just being as dishonest as the demolition crews. But here's the thing about American cities, and Chicago in particular. The "we're totally out of space" argument collapses the moment you look at the map. Chicago is estimated to have more than 30,000 vacant lots, with roughly 10,000 of them being owned by the city itself, a combined landmass comparable to the entire Loop, or downtown area for those who aren't familiar. As of spring 2025, many of those lots are clustered in neighborhoods whose populations have fallen to less than half their 1960 levels. These aren't in some distant exurb, many are a short walk from CTA train stations. The Institute for Housing Studies at DePaul University has documented enormous numbers of vacant parcels within a half-mile of the Green Line and Blue Line stops on the south and near west sides. So the picture is almost absurd when you zoom out. On the north side, developers are demolishing sound, beautiful centennial greystones because we need housing. Meanwhile, a few miles away, there are thousands of empty lots sitting on transit lines begging for exactly that housing. The problem was never a shortage of land. It's that developers chase the highest value neighborhoods, and in those neighborhoods, the path of least resistance runs straight through our architectural heritage. Now, the city has launched programs like its Missing Middle initiative and the Shy Block Builder land sale portal, specifically to steer construction onto these vacant south and west side parcels. That's the YIMBY dream done right. More homes, no demolition, neighborhoods stitched back together instead of hollowed out. At this point, a committed YIMBY might say fine, but who cares about some old greystone? People need homes, not sentimental attachment to limestone. Now, let me answer that on 3 levels, because character is real, but it's also measurable. First is community and identity. Chicago's greystones, 2-flats, workers' cottages, and neighborhood churches aren't just old, they're the physical record of who built this city. The 2-flat in particular has been called a working man's palace, a building type mass-produced for the immigrant families who arrived a century ago, offering both a home and a rental income to climb into the middle class. When you erase them block by block, you're not just losing pretty facades, you're losing the story of a place. When every neighborhood converges on the same beige boxes, you run the risk of turning Chicago into something that looks like Houston, but on a big lake. Next, we have affordability hiding in plain sight. Here's the twist that should make YIMBYs pause. Those old buildings are often the affordable housing. The Institute for Housing Studies at DePaul found that Chicago lost more than 4,800 2- to 4-unit buildings between 2013 and 2019. Representing 11,775 housing units, or about 4.2% of the stock, and that 47.5% of those buildings eliminated were replaced with a single-family home through conversion or demolition and new construction, mostly on the north side. 2 to 4 flats are the housing type most likely in Chicago to offer rents below $900. About 34% of their rental units do, and roughly 60% of Latino renter households and 32% of Black renter households live in them. So the demolition trend isn't just destroying character, it's destroying naturally occurring affordable housing and replacing it with luxury product. And that's the opposite of the YIMBY goal. Last we have the environment. This might be the most underappreciated argument of all, and it's one environmentally conscious YIMBYs should take seriously. There's a saying in preservation circles, popularized by a former AIA president: the greenest building is the one that's already built. It's not just a slogan. When you demolish a building, you throw away all its embodied carbon, every ton of CO2 that went into mining, manufacturing, transporting, and assembling its materials, and you spend even more carbon building the replacement. The National Trust 2011 study, The Greenest Building, quantifying the environmental value of building reuse, found that it can take between 10 and 80 years for a new energy-efficient building to make up for the carbon spent demolishing and replacing an old one, and that reuse almost always offers environmental savings over demolition and new construction. Construction and demolition debris is also one of the largest waste streams in the country. Knocking down a solid masonry greystone to build a wood frame box isn't just an aesthetic and structural downgrade, it's a carbon nightmare dressed up as progress. So let's talk about what's actually going up, because this is where the quality question gets uncomfortable. A huge share of new American apartment buildings are what's known as 5/1s, up to 5 stories of wood frame construction sitting on a concrete ground floor. They exploded in popularity after code changes in the 2000s and 2010s, and they're popular for one overwhelming reason. They're cheap, with wood framing running roughly 20 to 30% less than all masonry construction. Achieving near high-rise density at a wood frame price is a winning formula for getting more people housed. If the choice is a 5/1 on a parking lot or nothing at all, build the 5/1. But there are legitimate source concerns. Architect and University of Virginia researcher Gina Ripple, in her book The Type 5 City, raises real questions about these buildings' longevity. Wood expands and contracts, and notes they are notoriously hard to adapt to new uses later because of their dense grid of immovable structural columns. The greystone a developer is tearing down in Lakeview has already stood for 120 years and could easily stand for another century. Will the frame building replacing it be standing and desirable even 40 years from now? We should at least ask that simple question before we trade the permanent for the disposable. So what's the alternative? It's not freeze the city in amber and never build anything. It's smarter targeting. Build aggressively on the empty lots and parking lots, and when you do work with existing buildings, reuse them instead of razing them. This is called adaptive reuse, and the best news in this whole story is that it works. It's happening, and it produces spectacular results. In Logan Square, the City Council in 2025 approved a plan by MO2 Properties to convert a 100-year-old church at 2625 North Talman into 16 residential units. And in Humboldt Park, the nonprofit housing group LUCHA is converting the Humboldt Park United Methodist Church into 10 new affordable apartments while rehabbing a dozen existing units next door. Same building type, same corner of the city as the demolished Lutheran church, but a completely different and better outcome. This isn't a Chicago-only phenomenon. Across the country, adaptive reuse has become one of the biggest trends in real estate. According to Rent Cafe's analysis of Yardi Matrix data, Chicago has created 14,167 apartments through 91 adaptive reuse projects, the second most of any U.S. city, behind only New York's roughly 18,500. Milwaukee has turned old tanneries and shoe factories into more than 3,000 loft apartments. In Cincinnati, a former performing arts high school became alumni lofts, complete with the original chalkboards and marble staircases. And the Federal Historic Tax Credit, a 20% credit for rehabilitating certified historic buildings, has, since 1976, helped produce more than 185,000 low and moderate income affordable housing units, while preserving more than 48,000 buildings. Churches, importantly, can qualify for those credits, which often makes conversion financially competitive with demolition. Chicago's own downtown offers the biggest proof of concept. Through the LaSalle Street Reimagined initiative, the city is converting a string of vacant historic office towers in the Loop into housing, with a requirement that at least 30% of the units be affordable to households earning up to 60% of the area median income. A plan expected to add well over 1,000 apartments, including hundreds of affordable ones, without demolishing a single historic building. And that's what saying yes should look like. The bottom line, I'll give the YIMBYs the last word on their strongest point. We need to build, and we need to build a lot. Blocking all new housing to freeze neighborhoods in place is its own kind of destruction, one that prices out the young, the working class, and the newcomers who've always given cities their energy. The research is clear that more supply helps, and I won't pretend otherwise. But build more and demolish our heritage are not the same sentence, and the tragedy of the current moment is that we keep confusing them. There are more than 30,000 vacant lots in Chicago and thousands more surface parking lots across every American downtown. There is no reason, none, that the housing we so desperately need has to come at the cost of a 130-year-old church or a pair of greystones that have watched over the same street since before the Model T. When a developer tears down a solid, beautiful, century-old building to put up a cheaper one that holds no more people, that's not progress, it's just waste with a permit. The greenest building is the one already built. The most affordable apartment is often the old one already standing. And the neighborhood worth living in is the one that has character. A smarter YIMBY movement in Chicago would build like crazy on the empty lots in Austin and Garfield, convert the old churches and factories and offices, and treat the wrecking ball as the last resort it should always have been. Our cities can have more housing and keep their souls. We just have to stop pretending that we're forced to choose. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.